Welcome to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid. A set of conversations about our government, our politics, and the kind of country we aspire to be. And now, here's your host, Edwin Eisendrath, on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. It's a beautiful day here in the upper Midwest. It is unseasonably warm, though. Wow. We had snow last week, and it's like 60 now. Who knew? I've been thinking a lot about this. The most hated man in America is its president. Right? I mean, that's a weird thing to say in a democracy. And the actions he's taken since returning to office are even less popular than he is. Like, how is any of this possible? And what does it mean? You know, the answers aren't really obvious. I mean, not you guys, but lots of people who don't spend a lot of time with politics, they just say, like, don't worry too much. The pendulum swings, you know, to the extent that Donald Trump has gone too far. Americans will correct things in the next election. Democrats, they tell me, focused on bathrooms, not kitchen tables. And Republicans focused on the economy. And Democrats chastened will move to the center. And problems will get fixed. The thing with what lots of people are telling me is lots of people are wrong. Democrats didn't focus on bathrooms. Republicans said they did. The media repeated the claim, and, you know, many people believed it. Wedge issues got used like clubs and crowded out nearly every conversation that mattered. The Democratic brand is deeply underwater, and people across the political spectrum distrust that any government will deliver the American promise. And so we seesaw back and forth each election cycle, and each time everyone's just a little bit more dissatisfied. That's terrible. And meanwhile, the American people, while we languish, you know, an oligarchy has grown ever more powerful. I mean, the president's friends now own most of the traditional national media, most of the local television stations, most of the talk radio, and most of the surviving newspapers. They also own the social media platforms, and they control the algorithms that determine what news Americans see. And in return for the president using the power of government to approve the mergers, these oligarchs fund his golden ballroom, buy his crypto coins, contract with his children, and use their vast media empires to keep him in power. It's really corrupt and dangerous. And look, if that's not so clear, this corrupt circle is most obvious in the case of the oil oligarchs. Trump asked for $1 billion campaign donation and promised to end all efforts to forge a green energy future. The oligarchs paid up. Then, as president, Trump went to the UN and called climate change a hoax. They fund him, he makes them richer, and literally everyone else on the planet loses. Look, oligarchs are by definition corrupt. And boy, is this the most corrupt administration in America's history. But oligarchies, after all, are built on the idea of pay to play. So it's in keeping, right, that the DHS czarina, Kristi Noem, you know, she said, oh, there's a national security emergency, so she bypassed normal oversight and inked a more than $200 million ad contract with a company called the Strategy Group. And it turns out, of course, the Strategy Group is a firm tied to her closest aides and maybe even to her. According to great reporting by ProPublica, government contracting experts said, I'm reading this, the depth of the ties between DHS leadership and the Strategy Group suggested major potential violations of ethics rules. Okay, that's actually the point. Those in power have to use government and government power to enrich themselves and their friends. In oligarchy, that's a feature, not a flaw. And to make pay-to-play work, the guy in charge needs to be in control of the government's money. Never mind Congress and the power of the purse. The purse belongs to the boss. And oh, what a bad thing that is. Do you remember Donald Trump figured out that litigation could be used to hide bribes? He sued CBS News. No legal expert thought his suit had any merit. But Paramount, CBS's owner, needed the Trump administration to approve a merger. So they settled the suit for $16 million. Right? Not a suit they would have lost, but they handed over $16 million under the guise of settling the suit. Trump then slow-walked the merger. Paramount upped the settlement, adding another $20 million, so $36 million, not to the government, but to Mr. Trump, and the deal was approved. Wow. Now, the same strategy is being used to pillage taxpayers. Disgraced former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, he's claimed that he was unjustly prosecuted during the Biden administration. Please. Never mind that he pled guilty. Never mind that his federal lawsuit saying he was unjustly prosecuted was dismissed by a federal court. Now the Trump administration is reopening the case and preparing to hand him $50 million of your money and mine. Why pay Flynn? This case was dismissed. Why reopen it and hand him cash out of the Treasury? Maybe it's because he's out there every day preaching the gospel of Trump to QAnon and Christian nationalist audiences. Ugh. And, of course, Trump has directed the Justice Department to pay himself $230 million, nearly $250 million. He says it's because the Biden administration raided Mar-a-Lago looking for stolen documents. Never mind the government found stolen documents in Mar-a-Lago. Never mind they asked politely for the documents to be returned. Never mind that Trump tried to hide them. Now he wants taxpayers. Well, he doesn't think of taxpayers. He just thinks that's his money. That big federal treasury, his money. Don't be surprised if that visit to Fort Knox a while ago resulted in a whole bunch of gold disappearing. Look, maybe this growing oligarchy means we're no longer the democracy we imagine ourselves to be. I mean, in what kind of democracy would people be represented by a man who dips into taxpayer money for himself? Or an administration that rewards its leaders for doing the same? I mean, in what kind of democracy does the president threaten to take food away from his own people, as he did last week? Right? Or threaten anyone in Congress who says evidence of that he's hiding child molestation should be made public. What kind of democracy does that? I mean, Louis XVI didn't care if his people were hungry. Tsar Nicholas didn't care. It didn't work out too well for them. But what did they focus on? Oh, right. They focused on the thing that interested them were the oligarchs who would gather in their gilded ballrooms in their palaces. And soon Donald Trump will have one of those too. Now maybe, just maybe, he thinks his oligarchy is now firmly enough entrenched to survive such contempt for Americans. And I'll give you this, it's possible he's right. It's possible the old tyrannical European idea of a government by a handful of barons has taken root here. But there's another possibility, one that was fully on display last week when Americans voted in huge numbers to kick his ass and elected people who would actually work for us. It's been on display here in Chicago for months as residents, journalists, and jurists have all stood up to the president's lawless and cruel attack on an American city. You know what? It was on display a year ago when the voters in Wisconsin sent talk about oligarchs, Elon Musk packing and told him that no matter how much of his own personal money he spent, he wasn't going to buy a Supreme Court seat. The other idea, this other possibility, has deep roots on this continent, unlike that European tyranny. It is an idea that refuses to die because it embodies the greatest aspirations of mankind: freedom, equality, human dignity. It is time to put an end to these oligarchs. It's time to put an end to the seesawing between political parties. It's time to build a governing majority that will improve our lives so that young people can afford a home, so that working people can afford health care, so that everyone has enough food, for gosh sakes. And you know what? We've done that before. And I don't think we are a lesser people today. In fact, I know we are just as great a people today. And one of the reasons why I know it is the guests you're going to hear from on this show. I have a great show for you today, beginning with my friend Tara McGowan, who will be with us as soon as we come back from this short break.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid, on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. Before we get started, I want to apologize for the quality of my sound. I do this from a home studio, and Comcast had an outage about 10 minutes ago, so I am sitting outside using the best cell signal I can, but we're going to hear whatever goes by on the street. So let me just apologize for that at the beginning. But I am really proud and happy to be joined by my friend, Tara McGowan, who is honestly one of the bravest people. She went from a career in news to one in politics to one back in news, but somewhere in between, she came to understand that the whole news ecosystem and with it, the political one, were broken. And she recognized that great reporting still happens, but it isn't winning the battle against great propaganda, in large part because Americans never see that great news. So she set out to create a new kind of news organization, one that actually gets real stories in front of Americans. And the result is Courier Newsroom. She now operates in, 11 states?
11 states.
11 states, and pushes news out onto platforms like TikTok and into the news feeds of folks who, you know what, after getting fed a diet of actual news, do strange things like register and vote. It's an amazing thing she's accomplished. Anyway, Tara, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Edwin. You're way too kind. And it's so funny. Number one, you sound great. And two, I am very far away from you in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. And I also had a Cox power outage today,
wow.
Which makes me a little bit, I haven't seen this in the news, but a little concerning.
Yeah, this is, things are falling apart, as William Butler Yeats said. The center cannot hold.
The center is definitely not holding.
No, it's not holding. So later in this show today, I'm going to be talking to Michael Mann, who is one of the world's great climate scientists. And Tara, he's right? He's spending all his time now fighting a system of lies that are perverting both science and the democracy. This is the battleground, the one you've chosen.
It sure is. Unfortunately, it's not even just climate change, right? It's everything. The propaganda, the disinformation, the misinformation, it is rampant on pretty much every issue and conversation topic that you could come up with today. And a lot of that is a result of the media ecosystem today, how decentralized it is, and yet how controlled the mass communications platforms on the internet are by really unsavory folks that have chosen, greed and an oligarchy over, responsible leadership of these platforms. It's a battle that we're fighting on every single front, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah, the president makes people rich by letting their corporations merge and grow, provided they also buy media companies and then use those media companies and the algorithms they control to try and keep his administration above water. And it's a playbook we've seen around the world. It's enormously dangerous. And the enormously dangerous thing for all of us is no one anymore knows what to believe, because even you and me, we begin a conversation with internet outages in Chicago and in Rhode Island, and we wonder, right, like what's really going on? We're in that world now, in part because these guys have said expertise is a lie, facts are not facts, you get to choose. and don't believe anything. And in that case, a guy like Donald Trump can say whatever he wants and be immune from consequence.
That's exactly right. So I want to try and be positive in this conversation, but yeah,
we'll get to positive. I promise.
We will. I mean, we all have to, right? Every day, it's a struggle, and it's necessary. Yeah, like we talked, there were a lot of us that did a lot of work. You included, myself included, a lot of our friends and allies, right? We understood clearly the risk. They were not hiding it, by the way, which is why it's so baffling to me that so many folks still seem shocked about the brazen corruption of this administration. But we saw clearly and fought so hard against this and tried to forewarn what was coming in so many ways that it still does not make it easier to live through it. Right. And which is, that's a good thing. We're humans with hearts and empathy. It's still very difficult, but, you have to remain really, really, really clear eyed. You have to take these folks at their word. You need to, be able to, take deep breaths and understand that the chaos is the point, the cruelty is the point, and that you have to be able to stay vigilant and focused on accountability in every way, shape, and form, from journalism accountability, reporting accountability, like we do at Courier, to protest, to getting out in the streets, to boycotting the companies that have aligned themselves with this administration, or as I like to refer to it, a regime, because it far more closely resembles an authoritarian regime than a democratic administration. And we have to fight on all fronts, and staying really clear-eyed and aware and engaged is difficult. And that is also the point, right? They want to wear us down. And some of us are stronger than others, not naming any names in the Democratic Senate.
Oh, I want to talk to you about the Senate. Not yet. I promise that's on my list. But on this notion of being worn down, I actually think the other guys are being worn down. The weight of their incompetence, the weight of their scandals, the weight of their corruption is beginning to tell. And Americans, despite all the lies, despite the power of their propaganda, Americans are seeing it. And I mean, Donald Trump's poll numbers are abysmal. What we did to them in the last election was shockingly big turnout to repudiate what they did and to say there are good candidates out there. So I think they're in disarray. And Tara, it reminds me, General Ulysses Grant in his memoirs talked about his first big battle. And he said, look, we spent the night on one side of a hill and the rebels were on the other side. And all night long, I threw up. All night long, I had diarrhea. I was terrified, absolutely terrified of the battle to come. And in the morning, I got up and I went over the hill with the army, and the other guys had fled. It turns out they were as scared as we were.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are starting to see a lot more cracks, and that's important. And honestly, the divisions that are occurring within, the broader conservative and MAGA movement, those are honestly sometimes best left alone to them, right? We need to exploit them when it's appropriate, but it is starting to happen on its own. And some of that is because of the increased awareness and pressure being placed on them by their constituents, right? I mean, with the government shut down, and it became actually, for the first time, actually a relevant daily conversation about the cuts to healthcare, the rising healthcare premiums. All of that information was not reaching the general public in this country when it was being debated and ultimately passed in Congress under the big ugly bill. It wasn't until Democrats finally took a stand and then Republican members of Congress started to hear from their constituents, who, by the way, they have far more constituents directly impacted by the cuts to Medicaid and the closure of rural hospitals than even Democratic members, given how the geography maps out. That's really important, and that has to be a drumbeat every single day now through the midterms and beyond, because people are actually going to be feeling, they already are getting the letters, they're going to be feeling the economic pain, the trauma of needing to drop their health insurance or not be able to afford it. Families will go bankrupt because of this. Like, these are really, really dire, harmful consequences. And they cannot place blame on Democrats for this. And a lot of the members are becoming very woke to that.
Yeah, good choice of words.
Yes.
The MAGA coalition has these two parts: the oligarchs who want to own everything, and who Donald Trump loves and wants to be with. That's the world he wants, and he wants to line his own pocket. And then there were the ordinary Americans who thought, look, government hasn't worked for me for a while, and he's going to take care of us. And that coalition is broken because the oligarchs do not care a bit about those ordinary Americans. Threw them under the bus. Big, beautiful bill throws them under the bus. But they were lying about it. And this crack could become an enormous opportunity to build a political movement that starts to create opportunity for Americans again.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. It's truly the moment where the emperor and his oligarchy have no clothes, right?
That's an image I don't want in my head.
I'm really sorry. I know, none of us do. But it is true, right? That a lot of people put enormous, blind, in my opinion, faith in Trump because he did very, very brilliantly and strategically meet them where they were emotionally angry, fed up, feeling counted out of the system, right? And I'm giving them a lot of grace. There's a lot of really more hideous attributes of some of his base that he exploited. But people, by and large, the majority of Americans have been sold out to corporations, even under Democratic leadership in this country for too long. And they are fed up. And so, of course, someone who's telling them, yes, you have been screwed and I am going to be your savior, whether or not it looks like, a bankrupt felon rapist or not, sounds like a better deal than being gaslit again by another DC suit. I frankly think it is actually able to be reduced to that. And that's why it's not about partisanship or party ID anymore. It's really not. The same people who voted for Trump are voting for people like Zohran Mamdani and Graham Plattner. It really is true because they are all saying one thing that is the same. You have been screwed by the current system. I think they're right. Yes, I think that is right.
So I think the partisan part of this, if there is one, is that Democrats have a chance to build a party that addresses that and to work for Americans again. And I do not believe the Republican Party has that chance because of its oligarchy that's so deep into it. I just don't think it could ever do that anymore.
No, I think you're entirely right. And the really upsetting part of all of this, right, is that Democrats actually are the party that have represented between the two of them, right, very imperfectly to my earlier point, but that have been working for the working people more than Republicans. Not enough. They lost trust and faith, but they do have an easier way to bring back support and power. And that's an important point too, right? Like two Tuesdays ago was one of the best election days, right? Certainly in an off year that Democrats have ever had, not just because they won across the board in states like Virginia and New Jersey and in the New York City mayoral race, the massive, extraordinary primary turnout there, but because it was a referendum on Trump and MAGA. And so this also happened after 2016 and Democrats made a massive mistake at that point because they had this hubris that it had something to do with them. And it really didn't.
No.
And so they didn't learn any lessons. They didn't evolve their strategies or their playbooks. And really, I do chalk it up to hubris and being generally out of touch. And I think that mistake cannot be made any longer. That's why I'm always someone who says focus on the common enemy, like intra-party and intra-movement fights are a distraction. That's usually me until now in some ways, because I have given way too much personal and professional grace and time and excuses to, frankly, so many Democrats in leadership and in running the institutions and the committees who really did not have any humility or introspection. And I am so terrified that they make the same mistakes again, and we're seeing that happen, but that they continue to make those mistakes and not understand that you actually need to deliver for the people that are voting for you, even if they are not voting because of what you are selling and they are voting against something that is hurting them explicitly. And we, in order for all of us to get out of the pendulum swing of every election cycle being a change election, somebody has got to deliver
right
for the American people.
I totally agree. I mean, the older I get, the more amazed I am at FDR. Yes. Just, I mean, there was a huge fascist movement when he was president too, and he stared him down and he said the power to do this good is going to come from doing it for the American people in a way that I can explain every day, that people will understand that we're working together to make the country better. And I think there's a hunger for that again in the country. And one more thing about that. What I saw Tuesday and what I see on the streets of Chicago during this CPB and ICE occupation is something so beautiful, because one of the reasons these guys have been able to maintain their lives is pitting races against each other, pitting groups against each other. And in this last election, I saw working people, whether they were black or Latino or white, pulling the same direction. And on the streets in my city, I'm seeing an attack on immigrants and a defense that looks like everybody. And that is a very positive sign, I think.
No, I absolutely agree. I think that this is our biggest opportunity to, I worry about the mechanics of it a bit, but I do believe that there is a very big and growing movement in this country for a different way.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, maybe we can put some of the racial stuff behind us, because this new blatant bigotry, this Groyperism stuff that is crept into the Republican Party, I think really does disgust most Americans.
Yeah. And well, I was going to say, Edwin, they are the super minority. They just happen to have been incredibly well-resourced, well-organized, and incredibly ruthless in their tactical strategy to make a super minority of white nationalists and white nationalism take over the federal government and the Supreme Court and many state legislatures in this country. Like that, right? That's a part of how we got here that often doesn't get enough mainstream traction. But like Leonard Leo is one of the most dangerous and effective evil people in the world. Like, he doesn't get the same notoriety as Stephen Miller, who deserves every ounce of it that he gets, but he really did rig the Supreme Court.
He did. He captured them.
He did, which, played a huge role in the dramatic diminishing of trust in our government and institutions and courts, and the ability for this regime administration to be able to absolutely ignore rule of law and claim immunity and just mandate on anything that they do not have under our Constitution.
The Supreme Court is about to undo the Voting Rights Act.
I thought we were going to talk about something positive.
Okay, well let's.
No, it's true. We have to talk about this. It's so.
But we did. So we did talk about something positive.
So
I think this coalition that is forming is big, and it is a rejection of these ugly things. A rejection.
Yes. Well, that was my point. There are so many more of us. And by the way, like, we live in a multiracial country and society. And by the way, that is why we were created.
Well, we always were. There was never a time we weren't. I mean,
No.
after Europeans came here, right? Because there were people here when we got here, and they weren't
Exactly.
European. And then Europeans came, and guess what? They brought people from Africa, and then people came from all over the world.
It is the literal DNA of this country. These white national terrorists are literally trying to co-opt a country they have absolutely no claim to. I really do believe that the challenge is that so many of our people, our family, our disenfranchised communities, right? Because of that disenfranchisement, because of that systemic oppression and racism that has been part of our government for so long, do not feel a sense of agency. No. And without that sense of right? Because there's so many more of us, 92 million eligible voters did not vote in the 2024 election. That number haunts me. 92 million. There are so many more people who believe in the promise of this country, but who have absolutely lost faith in its governing system.
Well, I boy, do I get that, or don't have time for it. But they also don't know anything about it. And that's partly where you come in and the work you're doing. I mean, you're getting information to some of those 92 million.
Yes, that's our whole focus. It's why I started Courier almost 7 years ago, was that, the tens of millions of Americans hadn't just been left behind by both political parties. They'd been left behind by the news media. Entirely. Like really good quality journalism in this country is now reserved exclusively for the most wealthy, high educated, and frankly, majority white Americans, in order for those organizations to stay in business. And of course, there are some beautiful exceptions to the rule, but, local news has been absolutely destroyed in this country. They were not able to keep up, with the evolving technological boon and devolution and decentralization of media with the internet and social media. And there is a direct correlation between access to local news, which remains the most trusted news source for all demographics in this country. But there's a direct correlation between access to local news and local information and civic participation.
Yep.
And so, it was never accessible to all folks, but now there are news deserts everywhere. And also, the way people consume information today has changed, which I always saw from day one of Courier as an opportunity, right? We can meet people where they are with much more digestible news and information on TikTok, on Instagram, through free newsletters. Free information is critical. It is necessary. It is mission critical to democracy, and there is too little of it that is actually factual and has integrity and trusted messengers and, really seasoned and trained journalists and creators. And so that's the problem we're trying to solve. It's a massive problem. I want to be very clear. It should not just be one organization, right? We need a lot more couriers.
It's expensive to tell the truth. Reporting is expensive. Lying is inexpensive. Make stuff up is free. So this is really hard to do. Where does democracy die again? I know you've said it a bunch. Behind a paywall. So that's one of the reasons why I like radio. Right? I
love radio.
I love radio. People can just listen. But broadcast is tough, and most broadcast outlets, because the right wing knows this, are owned by the right wing. That's certainly true of most of local television stations in America. And God knows our little tiny voice here does not compete with right wing talk radio. So, yeah.
Well, it's a start, it's a start, and it does. It matters. We have to be everywhere the way that they have been.
Everywhere.
And we have to have brave billionaires because, frankly, you said it. It's expensive. The right does not have a smarter business strategy. They just have more people who have a financial incentive to win the information war, to win the political and cultural war, to make themselves richer. It's a very simple equation. It's very difficult to convince billionaires to invest deeply in a media ecosystem that that truly has to be completely altruistic, because when progressives are in power, they're going to pay more taxes.
That's right. And
they should.
And they'll also have more customers because Americans will be able to afford things again. But that's a tougher sell. I get it.
Yeah.
It's a much tougher sell. All right, let's go where I promised we would go. The Senate, they did. I'm proud of the Democrats. They did all the things they should have done. They raised all of these issues. They stuck together. And then I'm not happy with how this shutdown ended. And I know you're not happy with it either. Although we probably don't agree completely about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts about its ending.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'm like a lot of people in the country and in the broad, beautiful, diverse tent that is the MAGA movement. I'm most angry because we were really starting to win. It's one thing if I also believed that there was no possible way. So number one, if they were never, if we did not believe collectively that increased pressure with, of course, some harm because they are cruel, imposed on the American people, from day one of the shutdown, you had to believe that it was possible to hold the line and apply enough pressure for them to come to the table and negotiate some level of compromise, right? And so that's what's so frustrating is that we were building pressure. They were freaking out. And I do think, and I don't know for certain, but I am concerned that the timing of the cave was such that Trump was starting to apply increased pressure on Republicans in the Senate to abolish the filibuster. And that is something that there is bipartisan agreement about among some Democratic senators and Republican senators that they want to prevent. And I believe that the filibuster should be abolished.
Me too.
And I think that's really important because I actually think that it wasn't just how empathetic the 8 senators who caved were about their specific constituents and the outsized impacts on the federal firings and back pay of the government shutdown and the SNAP cuts. All of these things were horrible, to be clear. No Democrat is defending keeping the government closed for a long period of time or the cruelty that Trump was imposing without need to not allow the SNAP benefits to be given. And so I think that's a bit of a cop-out because, yes, of course, that makes them look very empathetic in why they caved. I actually think there was something else going on. And that's what I'm most frustrated about.
Yeah. And you think that thing might have been the filibuster?
I think it was the filibuster.
It might have been the public sector unions. It might have been a lot of things. But
there's a lot of things. And look, at this point, we all need to move forward. I am not somebody who typically would belabor a point like this. It is not useful for that inter-party fighting. But I do believe this is not over, right? They got a pinky promise that we all know was from Republicans that they're going to negotiate with them on the ACA subsidies and on the health care cuts. We all know that they're not. We all know that something.
They didn't say that. They said they'd have a vote.
Right. Exactly. They said that they'd have a vote, not that
in the Senate.
Exactly. And so it won't.
So it's going nowhere. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's what I mean is it meant nothing. And I hate that the Democrats that caved actually did a media tour defending that because they just look so out of touch.
Here's what I think, and it's a little different than that. What I think is, here we're having this conversation through a phone because the internet's out and somebody's calling me and I want to hit the button to get rid of them. But I'm worried if I hit that, I'm going to
don't merge them in, or maybe, I don't know who is it.
So I'm not going to do anything and just let it go. I don't know who it is. Okay. So here's, my concern is this. The job of an elected leader is to be part of and to lead this movement of people to a better place. It's also part to do the job in the legislative body you're in. So in the Senate, the job is you make deals with the other side, you make the best deal you can make. But at this moment, the bigger job was to stand with your movement on the outside.
Yes.
And these guys got confused about what job they had at the moment, and they went back, they defaulted to their old comfortable Senate role of, hey, can we cut a deal? And Americans are like, are you it's a radio, the things I can't say. Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Are you kidding me? You went back to that role at this moment when you should have been standing here with us. And
That's right.
We're not stupid and we're not naive. You owed this mass group of Americans who were standing behind you in this showdown a conversation with us before you cut a deal. You could have said to us, these have said, we are never going to cut a deal. We're going to let America starve. And you know what? We're going to have to find another way to take this fight, but let's all agree. And then we could have had every Democrat voting that way, and we could have had all of us who are standing outside supporting them cheer at the fight. Because after all, we won a lot during this shutdown. We really did. But the end was so dispiriting because they got confused.
That's exactly right, Edwin, because I have said this too to folks. If there was no path and you really believed that all options were exhausted, then you take a week, or let's just call it 2 to 3 days,
and talk to us.
And you move the base with you.
Yes.
You say, and you make the Republicans be asked every day of that, why they are not right. Like, you continue to own it. You don't look weak then. The fact that, and that's why there's so much.
So how come this is obvious to you and to me and not to them?
Because they do not pay it. They do not believe that anything matters about their bubble and echo chamber. Like,
I can't believe that.
It gets back to hubris. I hate to say it, but it's basically like, we know best. And like, you don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. And I'm like, you're right. We don't. That was the other thing I wish they happened. If you guys are brokering deals amongst Democrats about this because you're cornered and there is no other way, and you really do want to prevent the harm, have those debates in public. Don't let the people who are too weak to hold the line or change the conversation for the better put a stain on the entire party. That's not fair. That's what I'm angry about. Like, let them hang out to dry on their own. And that is not what happened. And everybody who's paying attention knows that we're being lied to some degree, and we're being gaslit about what happened. And that's like, it's just so frustrating because it didn't have to be that way. They could have ended the shutdown with all of us in line with them. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. Because we're not crazy.
Right. And now I have absolutely no trust. I have no trust in the Senate leadership right now. And they have to broker another deal when this continuing resolution expires January 31st. So what are we going to do?
I mean, the good news is, and I say this a lot, the Democrats are not synonymous with the people we've elected to do some jobs in Washington, no matter how important those jobs are. They're the people who were standing next to me to the left and my right at a bunch of rallies this year. They're the people who voted on Tuesday, right? They're people all over the country who want the government to do what Democrats know they can do. And it's a pretty diverse crowd. I mean, the election in Manhattan and the election in Virginia were not the same, although both want to try different strategies to solve normal people's problems.
That's right. No, one of the most heartbreaking things I have not been able to get out of my head when people started to find out about the caving was somebody being like, we had people, including family members of mine, this person said, go to a food pantry for the first time and knew that they were doing it and were not angry, like that, the humiliation, the shame that people were made to feel in a moment where they understood why this fight was happening, right? So many people came out being like, why did you put us through this? It's just, honestly, it comes down to what it always comes down to, Edwin, a massive, massive communications fail, if not a political fail.
Yeah. I mean, courage failed too. And I mean, you know that American soldiers in Germany were going to food pantries in Germany because they weren't being paid, and the German reporters reported on it, and it was such, hello, these food pantries are for us, that's why we're doing it. The American soldiers, thank you for being stationed in our country, but seriously, you're going to our food pantries? That was an embarrassment for everybody, and I just think the colossal dangers of a federal government, real collapse, also got to them. And the federal government, this administration has done a lot to stress the federal government. You had DOGE, wreck a bunch of agencies, and a president appoint people who have no capacity to lead any of these agencies. And then you had the shutdown. People have had to worry that, okay, well, Social Security checks won't go out. We'll never be able to just do the basic functions of government because they've so badly stressed it. That's all they've done is just wreck. I mean, I guess that's a feature and a flaw. It's a terrible flaw while they stay in power, but it will let us build it back in a new and different and better way, not like it used to be.
No, that's exactly right. It really is. I tend to believe in the universe a little bit, and I think that we had to hit rock bottom, and frankly, Democrats have to hit rock bottom to understand that there has to be a new system that is built out of the rubble that is going to continue to be caused by this.
Right.
Right?
Donald Trump was actually elected president twice. Not 3 times, twice. How further rock bottom can the Democrats get that they lost the second time to a felon and a rapist and a guy whose first term crashed the economy and caused a pandemic to run rampant?
And who won the popular vote.
And
Democrats have the lowest approval rating since that question has been polled.
Right. So let's get back. I mean, part of this is self-inflicted. The other part is that the country believes that Democrats are the party Republicans say they are, as opposed to what I know them to be.
Right. I mean, I think look, I don't know what the Democratic Party is anymore. I think that it is about where I find silver linings right now is that there are enormous amount of people that are absolutely awake and alarmed to what this administration and this Republican Party stand for now in a way that a lot of them maybe weren't actually before this election and before how this administration has moved forward, and that there are going to be an enormous amount of primaries all across this country next year.
Yep.
And people that are driving actual enthusiasm and engagement and turnout in places where Democrats were losing ground, they are not going for Democrats that are operating as though things are normal. And that is going to be really important because we have to change the party. My line that I've been repeating ad nauseum is the Democratic Party is not going to save us. We have to save the country in the Democratic Party and the collective we, and that's important. That's democracy if we are able to do that. It's just the grip that the status quo have on so much it's a real fight, and having to fight 2 battles at once is exhausting and hard. And I do believe that it's necessary. And I think next year we're going to see I think it's going to be a tsunami against Republicans.
I do too.
And there's going to be so many bright spots, but we have got to make sure that we build from that in a direction that is representative of the people who vote Republicans out, and not assume that they are with whatever strategy Democrats think that they won on when truly they just didn't lose.
Look, Americans are, I mean, to say the truth about something Donald Trump has lied about, Americans are sick of losing. We're sick of losing to big corporations who shut off my internet right before I'm going to talk to you, right? Even though they're not going to give me a rebate for it. Sick of losing when you get on an airplane and your seat is now half the size it was before, or sick of losing when you just cannot afford to figure out where the food is coming from for the rest of the week, or you're a young person and you think I am never going to be able to own a home, right? I mean, Americans are sick of losing.
Yeah.
And they want a party that's going to fight for them, that's going to say, you know what, there is plenty of money in this country, and we don't need to take it all from a few people. We need to make more of it and make it so that that profit is yours too, that you have a stake in the way this country is going. And I look at what's happened in the last 2 years in these mass mobilizations, and I think, wow, we are going to get there. Because first, these mobilizations are demanding change. They're not going to wait around for a bunch of red tape and processes.
No.
I mean, Joe Biden passed a bunch of good laws, and you know what? It didn't take place fast enough. People aren't going to put up with that anymore. They're going to say, we need things to work. We need things to work for us. And so we're going to have, I just think this movement is going to produce an energetic democratic government that does things at all levels that we haven't seen in 100 years.
That's exactly right. And it needs to be a true shift in power dynamics and how power is used and leveraged. And I absolutely believe that that's possible. And maybe it wasn't possible actually before now that we could make that kind of change in our politics. And I just hope that, we know how Trump operates. We know that he is impulsive and cruel, and we know that also he is definitely deeply unwell in a lot of ways. But he has a lot of really horrible people around him that have outsized control and power.
Oh, so speaking of horrible, I can't let you off this call without just saying Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be as bad as this. This is unbelievably bad.
I did think it was going to be as bad as this. I think it's worse than actually we've seen and we can imagine. Again, talk about, fissures in the Republican Party and movement. There are some really brave Republicans standing up and being like, I am sorry, protecting pedophiles is a bridge too far.
That takes courage, right? Really? In this world, that takes courage.
Well,
so just imagine this with me. The House votes, they're going to vote to release the files. Yes. The Senate, it's going to go to the Senate. I think the Senate might vote to release the files. And then Donald Trump's going to veto it.
Of course.
He's going to say, we have to move on. There are too many important things. I'm at war in Venezuela. We can't do this now. And he's going to veto it. And I mean, how is that? How is it possible that the day he vetoes it, he isn't finished and every Republican walk away from it?
That's right. We can never, you're absolutely right, though. He's never going to let the files be released, and we can never let this go.
I mean, I'm sure he's promising Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and everybody else that if they burn them and destroy them all, he'll pardon them.
Of course. But they've already, this is the thing. This is where they are idiots, right? Because they did not, for the biggest cover up in U.S. political history, and it truly is, they didn't cover up very well.
No.
They have been absolutely spiraling in public, on cable news, on the internet. It has not been a controlled narrative from them at all. The worst, messiest cover up I've ever seen. And so it won't matter. They've already lost the trust of some of their base, where this was their number one issue. Their number one issue was justice and accountability here. And I also am really grateful that people are coming together to be absolutely not, because guess what? Trump was absolutely a part of that ring.
We now know it.
Right. And we actually launched a database of every single one of the released emails and files on couriernewsroom.com. People can go look at it. It was the top of Reddit this morning. And all
right, everybody, did you hear that?
Trump, yes, couriernewsroom.com. Go look at the database that we put together. Trump is mentioned more than any other person. More than any other person. Tim Walz retweeted it and said, that's an awful lot for someone who claims to be innocent. This is a massive, massive scandal and cover up. He is absolutely guilty of something. He is acting like it. And so this is really important. We need Republicans and more Republicans to feel pressured, because that's the only question that matters is, are you willing to stand by and protect a pedophile? Are you?
Or dozens of them, even worse.
Dozens of them.
Right.
It's just.
And Kash Patel and Tom, whatever his name is, Bongiorno, whatever that guy is, Bongino, who've made their careers banging the table saying, pull up your big boy pants and show us the data. And now they're part of hiding the data?
That's my theory. That's my theory on why he put them in those positions.
Yeah.
Right? He was like, your bases will believe you when you tell them there's nothing there, because you're the ones who ratcheted it up. And look how that fell apart.
Like I said, they if Democrats cannot win the biggest election ever, I mean, I know we have to protect the elections because they'll do anything they can to mess with them. And I've seen what they do with troops in a city because I've seen it in my city. They will be all over polling places, I'm afraid.
Of course.
And we are just going to have to be the bravest voters ever.
We will be. We will have to be the bravest, and we will have to do movement work beyond elections. We will have to. That is how you take back power from despots and dictators and wannabe dictators. Is oftentimes it needs to go beyond elections. We have these playbooks in Hungary and Turkey and Brazil to look to. We need to understand that is how bad it is. And we have the other playbooks, the ones that we ran here during every time America's made great progress. Yes. And those are the playbooks of mass public, nonviolent protests, right? It gave us civil rights. It gave us women's rights. It gave us labor rights. It gave us environmental protections. Every bit of progress we've ever made has not come from a handful of legal fights. It's come from massive amounts of people saying, hey, wait a minute, our country can do better. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's people
and
power.
To be successful, they need information. So just take a minute and tell people how they can support Courier.
You can go to couriernewsroom.com. A lot of the stories on that at the front are national. If you go to the About page, you can scroll down and find one of our 11 states to go through to those newsrooms. If you know people in Arizona, Iowa, Michigan, there's 11 of them. I won't list them all, but go check it out. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell people who have family in those states to sign up for those newsletters, share the content, support the work. I say today there are two kinds of media in America under this regime, unfortunately. Independent media like Courier and like WCPT and what you are doing, Edwin, and then there's state-run media, the media that has capitulated, that has been suited into submission by this White House. And we need to support independent media and local media in any way, shape, and form we can.
Thank you. I am so proud to be on this journey with you. I cannot tell you. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you, Edwin. Thank you so much for everything that you do.
Talk to you soon.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
That's fine.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I got a real treat for you. Charles Gaba is a healthcare data analyst. He's a sort of fabulous blogger, founder of something called ACAsignups.net. And look, he has been paying a lot of attention to questions around the ACA subsidies, federal health insurance plans generally. And look, since these were, the issue during the recent shutdown, at least they were the issue until the government decided to starve people, the issue during the shutdown, I thought it would be good to talk with him. So, Charles, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Look, I have two adult children on the ACA, and they just saw their premiums nearly double. That's painful. For them, really painful. Are they outliers? What's the big picture here, and how these sunsetting subsidies impact Americans?
Sure. Well, so I know that I and you and they and pretty much everybody are kind of crossing our fingers and holding out hope for some sort of a last minute, 11th hour arrangement to extend the enhanced subsidies.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. It will never happen.
Yeah, that was my next word was going to be, but that's highly unlikely at this point. Even if it were to happen at this point, just logistically, it would probably be like a retroactive thing, basically dating back to the beginning of the year. So, we have to move forward on the assumption that they are not going to be extended, that they're going to expire, at the end of December. So, there's around 24 million people in on-exchange ACA healthcare policies, myself included. My wife and I are both self-employed, so both of us, as well as our college-age son, are on an ACA plan. And it's going to be really, really ugly for most of us. Now, there are going to be some exceptions. here and there. Mainly due, and we can get into that if we have time. There are several states that have enacted, emergency legislation or policies or whatever to mitigate the damage. In some cases, fully. In some cases, partially. But that's still a small fraction of the total. And so for the most part, people are looking at 30%, 40%, 50%, 100%. In some extreme cases, 200 or 300%, doubling or tripling or even quadrupling of their net premiums. So, yeah.
Well, I assume that means that we will see people just quit and we'll go back to having large numbers of Americans uninsured.
The Congressional Budget Office, they projected, I believe, there's around 24 million total, plus actually more like 26 million if you include, there's a couple million people enrolled in off-exchange plans, like where they go directly, through the insurance carriers without, skipping past the exchange. But of those, the CBO projected that they expect I think it was around 4 million or so to just drop coverage entirely, basically being priced completely out of the market and just dropping their coverage and crossing their fingers and, hoping they don't get sick or, hit by a bus or whatever. The rest, the other 20, 22, 23 million, whatever of us, in most cases are going to have to, shop around, which I always advise doing anyway. And in many cases are going to be enrolling in either if they can afford it, they're going to have to pay through the nose to keep their existing coverage. If they can't, which most of us can't, they're basically going to have to be enrolling in a worse policy, to reduce, to avoid that massive premium hike. They're going to downgrade, from a gold plan to a silver, from a silver to a bronze, from a PPO to an HMO, from a carrier, that has a wide network to a carrier with a narrow network, that sort of thing. In most cases, you're talking about basically, okay, you'll save, quote unquote, on premiums by making up for it with a much, larger deductible and, other out-of-pocket expenses. So,
and so far we've been talking about the impact on the individuals, but the impact on the system is also powerful. I mean, I remember back before the ACA when we had 12 million uninsured in America. They were an enormous burden on the hospital system in the country because that's where they would go when they got really sick because they didn't have any health care. They'd go there for emergency treatment, and those expenses to hospitals were huge and then passed along. But now we're doing that in an era of Medicaid cutbacks too, so that hospitals are going to close, I think. What's going to happen?
There's going to be mostly rural, but also some urban hospitals are going to either close. Well, what'll probably happen is, they'll start by cutting back on services. If they have branch, like maybe the main hospital will stay, but like if they have a smaller, branch clinic or something, that may shut down or reduce their hours. So it'll be, in a lot of cases, it'll be a gradual thing. In other cases, they may just pull the plug completely and just, say we're shutting down. You have to remember that, so the Medicaid, the ACA exchange damage is going to hit starting January 1st, right?
Right.
Less than 2 months from now. The Medicaid damage, not all, but most of that, they push back, until after the midterms. A lot of it is actually kicking in before that, but the bulk of it is expected, going into 2027. But the thing is that, hospitals and clinics and so forth, they have to plan ahead. They're not waiting until that happens. In a lot of cases, they're looking at their annual budgets and projecting what they expect to happen. And so, in some cases, they're just saying, well, when those Medicaid cuts hit, then we're totally screwed. And so, I think there have actually already been a couple of announcements of closures here and there. Especially if it's a case where they're already on the edge, budget wise as it is. They're like, well, there's no way we're going to be able to take that hit, as well. So, there's going to be a lot of that happening. There's going to be a ripple effect, as you noted, when people lose health insurance, whether it's through the ACA coverage or Medicaid or anywhere really. when people go uninsured, then, as you said, they wait, in a lot of cases, they can't afford to pay directly, of course, so they wait until they actually get really sick or really injured, and then they end up in ER emergency care, which, of course, costs far more to treat someone in the emergency room than it does, in preventative care. And as you said, that the hospitals, they have to eat that cost, and so they're going to pass that along any way they can. And when it comes to negotiating, with insurance companies for employer coverage for the following year, that's going to come up. They're saying, well, we're not going to get stuck with this bill, so we're going to demand higher compensation, higher reimbursement rates, which means that people's, around half the country has insurance coverage through their employer, and so those rates are going to go up as well. So yeah, there's definitely a ripple. I mean, the money, it's got to come from somewhere. So either the hospital will close down because they go bankrupt, or they'll pass it along to everybody else, and everybody's premiums go up, or a combination of both.
Okay, just tell me in what world this sounds like good healthcare policy?
Well, probably the same world where, I guess it's considered good policy according to the current administration. I
mean, it's maybe they think we can't afford it, and we all should be less healthy. In the wealthiest country in the world, that seems bizarre. But it surely isn't good health policy. I mean, maybe there's a better one, but they haven't offered a better one. So this is really frustrating.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is it's become a running joke. The two, the movie Total Recall, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's that famous meme of when he's disguised as the woman at the airport or the spaceport in Mars. 2 weeks. That's become a famous meme because that Obamacare, the ACA replacement plan is always 2 weeks away. It's a barrage. It's always 2 weeks out.
Right. That promise was made when he was campaigning 10 years ago. 10 years. It's been 2 weeks away. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well. Okay. So enough of that. That is what it is. This time of year, everyone, particularly everyone my age, is bombarded with ads for open enrollment. Mm-hmm. And again, people my age are hammered with ads for Medicare Advantage. Mm-hmm. What do we all need to know?
Okay, so again, I primarily focus on the ACA, as you would imagine, given my site. So the first thing I would say, I put out an annual open enrollment guide for the ACA. It generally runs, starts on November 1st.
Yep.
And goes from there. And it's about a dozen pieces of advice that I always give. And the very first one every year, the very first piece of advice I always give is don't delay, get covered sooner rather than later. And I break out the deadlines for open enrollment. And I'm doing that this year as well, but there's a big caveat, which is that a lot of people are kind of holding off who might have enrolled or re-enrolled a couple weeks ago when it's open, are delaying a bit because that they're holding off for this last minute, hopefully last minute deal on the subsidies. And I understand that. I mean, my wife and I, we're holding off a little bit ourselves, but I would not advise holding off too long for a couple of reasons. First, because of course you never know, if you end up having some emergency on the day that you were planning on enrolling, and then, you miss the deadline. You don't want that. But also because, so if you choose a plan today, you are not committed to that the second that you enroll. You can change your mind, later on, as long as you do it before the deadline, which in most states is December. There's actually two deadlines in most states. The first one is on December 15th in most states, and that's for enrollment starting January 1st.
Yep.
But there's a second, but if you miss that first deadline, there is a second deadline, which is January 15th. You have another month to enroll or to switch. Like, let's say you sign up for one, starts in January, and then you change your mind.
Yep.
You might have that plan in January, but then as long as you enroll by January 15th, then that coverage will start on February 1st. And that's the one. That's the final deadline. And
right. So your first piece of advice is do not wait. You might screw it up and be left without any insurance. Get it done.
Right. And the thing is, there's some important caveats to this. In Idaho, I said most states. In Idaho specifically, December 15th is the final deadline. So if you live in Idaho, you have until December 15th. And if, I think it's on midnight on the 15th. And if you have not enrolled by December 15th, then you're basically, you're out of luck unless you qualify for like a special, enrollment period. There's a couple of other states where the deadlines are later.
Okay, so Charles, let's say this, because I don't want anybody listening to this show online in some state to rely on this and miss their deadline. Mm-hmm. What we really want to say is check your state. Check your state.
Yes. Yeah, and I have.
Or go on Charles's site and you'll find it. Yeah.
Yeah. If you go to acasignups.net, it's the very first post right at the top is my enrollment guide, and the very first thing it lists all the deadlines and so forth. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is, as I mentioned earlier, there are several states which have put into place either state-based subsidies, financial subsidies, or other programs that either mitigate or, in some cases, completely replace the lost federal subsidies, or at least for part of their population. So, for example, if you live in New Mexico has pulled off something of a miracle. Somehow, they only have about 70,000 enrollees because it's a small, low population state, but New Mexico is basically backfilling all of the lost federal subsidies, as far as I can tell, for basically everybody, at least for their current enrollees. And so if you live there, now, again, double check to be sure, but that's my understanding is that if you live in New Mexico, you should be relatively okay. Your premiums may go up a little bit because they always go up, there's a little bit of inflation here and there, but for the most part, you should be okay. In California, if you live or if you earn less than 150% of the poverty level, which is there's around 300,000 enrollees in California who are below that income level, they're supposed to have their lost premiums or lost subsidies backfilled as well. Other states like Colorado and Maryland and a few other, and New Jersey are also backfilling part of. So it's not for everybody, but if you're at the lower end of the income level, they're covering at least a portion of those lost to help mitigate the damage. There's also several states, and this gets really wonky, and we definitely don't have time to get into this, but there are several states that have instituted a pricing policy at the back end, that is for how the policies themselves are priced, such that gold plans, which normally cost more than silver, okay, because the way it works is you've got bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, and the idea is that bronze plans have the lowest premiums but the highest deductibles, out-of-pocket costs. Platinum has the highest premiums with the lowest deductibles. That gold plans actually cost the same or even less than silver plans, and so so in a lot of cases, people will actually be better off upgrading from silver to gold. They may actually save money by upgrading to a plan with a lower deductible, which I know sounds backwards, but that's just the way that it works out.
So the second piece of advice is shop.
Well, yeah, absolutely shop, which I always, every year I say shop around because you should always shop around, but this year it's really, really important because there's a lot of changes. So. Okay,
so move fast, shop around.
Right.
Be sure to check your state.
Yep. I'll skip over a couple of these because, again, we don't have time, so I'm going to get a little wonky. But let's see here. Next thing I would say would be, yes, there actually are several states that still have their the individual mandate penalty. You may recall that was a big deal for years about the federal mandate penalty. That is, if you don't get covered and you don't have an exemption, then you pay a fee. There are 5 states, California, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and then the District of Columbia, where they actually have their own version of that. So, check on that. There are exceptions for hardship and so forth. I'm guessing a lot more people will qualify this year than previously, but check into that. The other thing is that there's around 1.5 to 2 million enrollees who are going to hit, no matter what, whether they can afford it or not, that they are going to have to switch to a different insurance carrier, because every year there's always some carriers that reduce their footprint, that they pull out of certain states or certain counties. But there's also other carriers that expand into more counties or more states, and that's true this year as well. Aetna, for example, had announced earlier this year they're pulling out of every state, and they were in like over a dozen states, so they just pulled out of everywhere. So if you have an Aetna plan, you're going to have to move to a different carrier in your area. And then there's several others as well. Aetna also operates under different brand names, so you may not be on Aetna, but it turns out that you are with your subsidiaries.
Look, this is really helpful, and I those of you who are listening know this isn't what we usually do on this show, but I just think, given that we are in open enrollment, taking some of the mystery out of it, and talking to Charles, somebody who really knows, how to do this as well as it can be done, is important for everybody. Because I know I was on the ACA until I got old enough for Medicare. It is a thing. It's not always easy for people, but it's a government program that does its job. It helps people pay for insurance, and that we're busy picking on government a lot, but it's important for millions and millions of Americans.
And the other thing, this goes back to the shop around thing, is what I would strongly advise is do not allow yourself to be passively auto-renewed. That is, if you're a current enrollee and you take no action whatsoever, you don't do anything, you just sit it out and wait, then what's going to happen is you will be automatically renewed into your existing plan if it's still available. If they haven't drop that plan or drop that carrier, you'll be renewed into the existing plan. Or if it is not available, there's a hierarchy mapping rule. They'll transfer you into the next closest plan. Like from that, if you're in a silver plan from Blue Cross, they'll transfer you into another silver plan from Blue Cross. If that one isn't available. I strongly advise people not to do, like, you may decide that you want to stay in the same plan, but check into it. Log into your account through your ACA exchange, check out what's available, and make a decision, make an active decision. Because otherwise what will happen is, if you're subsidized this year and then next year you're not going to be, then your premiums are going to go up. But also, if there's a better plan out there, a better value, then you'll miss out on it, because they're just going to kick you into this, keep you in the same plan no matter what.
Yep.
And if they map you into a different plan, it may not be one that has,
what you want. Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, again, I really appreciate this. It's very helpful for people. And look, acasignups.net is the site that Charles has put together. I've looked at it. It's very good. If you're confused, go there. It'll help you figure this out. And he has lots of resources, that sort of guides that are and articles that are helpful. So I just want to be sure you guys know there are resources out there. So if you want to get signed up for the ACA while you can, that you can do it and do it as well as possible. Although it's going to cost you more because we got at least one party that doesn't believe the government has anything to do with health care. All right. Speaking of that politics part, how do you see the health care debate unfolding through the December Senate vote, through the January CR, which is coming because the government's only funded now through January, and then we have what kind of an issue do you think it's going to be in the midterms?
Yeah, you can say what you will about. There's lots of opinions, lots of emotions, lots of thoughts about how the government shutdown was handled, and what Democrats did right and did wrong, and whether they should or shouldn't have. The 8 Dems who did end up voting for it in the end. But what it did accomplish is that it moved the dialogue, it moved the national conversation squarely back onto the ACA specifically and healthcare policy in general. I mean, that would have happened to some degree anyway, because if the original CR had just passed, at the end of September, and the government had never shut down, us 24 million people would still be losing those, enhanced subsidies, right?
Yep.
So it would still be a big story, but it's a much bigger story now because there's been a lot more attention, a lot more headlines, a lot more focus on it, and it's really putting the pressure on Republicans because now it's squarely in the ball's in their court now, and they are freaking out about I don't know why, like this has not been a secret. I've been screaming from the rooftops about this for like a year and a half. Many other healthcare wonks have been as well, that this deadline is coming up. I don't know if they didn't realize it or didn't care or whatever, but now they're really caught with their pants down and they're scrambling to come up with something. You saw the other day, a few days ago, Trump gave some semi-coherent thing about about giving money directly to the people or whatever. Now you've got Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. He's trying to put together some sort of a health savings account scheme. Rick Scott, who was the CEO of the company involved in the largest Medicare fraud in history, U.S. Senator, he's coming up with his own idea as well. You've got Republican congressmen going on TV, on TV appearances, trying to dredge back up, going back to high risk pools. These are old, dusty ideas that I'm literally recycling blog posts of mine from 8 years ago. When we went through the whole repeal replace saga. I'm just dusting them off and updating the date, and I can just repost it because there's the same argument, the same nonsense that we went through then. And basically they've got nothing. I mean,
there we go. There we go. All right, so we have you and I have a minute left, I'm afraid.
Sure.
So we're heading towards a vote that let's see, you and I both think no, they're not going to extend the healthcare subsidies, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I mean, I'd love to be surprised, but
I doubt it. Then we have once again, they run out of money, and we have to decide what to do about that. And my guess is that healthcare is part of that conversation then too. But God knows, so could a war in Venezuela by then be part of that conversation. But it surely will be part of midterms.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because Americans are fed up with being yanked around this way. Hey, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your work and spending Saturday with us. Charles, thank you.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk journalism with you.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
Okay, everybody. I'm really thrilled to be joined by Nisari. She is an award-winning journalist in a city that still boasts of great journalism. Here in Chicago, we have traditional newspapers and broadcast news. We have a deep complement of new and innovative news organizations. Great reporting happens everywhere. And Nissa's own work, for example, revealed the sort of shocking life expectancy gap across the city. That led to some important work in healthcare in this city. And she's now the executive director of Borderless Magazine, which is a nonprofit news organization that focuses on that, issue that no one's ever heard of in America, immigration, and immigration in the Midwest. It's really important. Nissa, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. That was a really kind open and a deep cut there with the life expectancy story. I think that was almost a decade ago now. Thank you.
But I was involved in a lot of things in the city at the time, including working with some hospitals on some healthcare issues, and the reporting made a difference. I mean, launched a big effort here.
Yeah, and I mean, it's sad in some ways that the city's still dealing with these same issues, but I'm so glad that my reporting was able to shine some light on the work of people who are doing work to change that and to improve life expectancies in the city.
Yeah. Well, let's say you're a good journalist. You really are. And I want to talk to you about Borderless. So tell us about it.
Yeah.
Tell everybody about it. It's a fascinating and important new enough entry into the journalism world.
Sure. So I've been a journalist for about 20 years now. Grew up in the Chicago suburbs, got my start at Chicago Public Radio on the Worldview show, if you all remember that. And then spent some time as a foreign correspondent in Asia, and then moved back to Chicago with my husband. And at the time, I was covering a lot of criminal justice and health issues in the city, and immigration kept popping up as kind of a through line. That's something that we were covering a lot of the gun violence issues. We did a decent amount of reporting, on education and other beats in the city, but immigration I kept seeing again and again it not getting the coverage it deserves. So 1 in 3 Chicago families have an immigrant family member. There's about 1.7 million immigrants in the Chicagoland area. It's a huge part of our population. It's a huge part of my own family. And, as someone who is an immigrant living in Asia, I could see it from both sides. And so I was really curious about these issues. And then when President Trump was elected the first time, and, one of the first things he did was enact the Muslim travel ban. So this was late January, 8 years ago. And like many people, I was in shock that, something so blatantly racist, so blatantly anti-Islam could become law in our country. And I wondered as a journalist what I could do about it. And I really looked around and saw, again, a lack of coverage and just how ill-prepared we were as a city to report on these issues. Like I said, I've been a journalist for 2 decades. I've seen the number of news outlets go down a lot. I've seen the number of reporters and editors go down a lot. It's only 3 in 10 journalists are working in journalism still after 20 years. So we've lost 70% of our industry in the country. So we've had a lot of shrinking. This isn't news to anyone. But what the impact of that has been is there's so many stories that are not being covered, so many communities that are being left out. And, also, from a linguistic side, 1 in 3 families speak Spanish at home. Very few of our local news outlets are publishing in Spanish or reporting in Spanish. So I saw a big opportunity in this wake of a really devastating piece of executive order in law that came about. So myself and 2 other journalists at the time decided to do something about it. We created what was initially a blog to report on the individuals impacted by the Muslim travel ban in Chicago. And that grew and grew and eventually became a 501c3 nonprofit. And we really started with $0, zero anything, and we've grown to a staff of 10 today. And we're publishing still and really centering immigrants in our stories and publishing everything in English and Spanish. So we've grown a lot in almost 9 years from that moment of the Muslim travel ban.
Yeah. And immigration is, of course, not just an issue. It's the lived experience of millions. And you found a way to get reporters who are living that experience, who understand the communities, who are part of the communities they write about, which is one of the reasons why the writing is so lovely.
Yeah, so on staff, our staff is mostly made up of immigrants and family members of immigrants. Over 90% of our stories are reported or photographed by people from immigrant communities. It's really been a superpower. So, our staff speaks Vietnamese, Mandarin, Thai, Spanish, of course, and many other languages, and that allows us to access stories that other places simply can't get. But it also provides a kind of context because people are very familiar with culture and how different people move in different spaces. And so it's been really incredible to see everyone flourish, and for us to give these opportunities for young journalists to come into a newsroom like ours, get those skills, see other reporters and editors that look like them, have similar family histories as them, and then they go on to get amazing jobs at Washington Post or NPR or NBC, and they're changing the industry too. So it's been really interesting.
Dive in a little bit more. You have one of the things you do. You have a training of young journalists program. Right? Just talk a little bit about that, because you are changing the landscape of journalism.
Yeah, so our mission as a nonprofit, and we are nonpartisan as well, is to reimagine immigration journalism for a more just and equitable future. So we're really focused on not just reporting stories and providing information, which is, of course, like a very, very important part of what we do. But we really want to change how these stories are told in a big way. And so one of our programs beyond the reporting is called Pathways. And it's one of only 2 programs in the United States that offers these paid opportunities for emerging journalists from immigrant communities to get experience in the newsroom, work as an intern, work as a fellow, and really have a kind of 360 mentorship process as well to get those skills that will allow them to find a job in this really competitive environment, competitive industry. Mm-hmm. And, my background, like I've been a journalist, but I've also taught journalism in the college level. So as on the personal level, I love doing that too, and just pouring into the next generation. And,
one of my really 40-year-long friends, I know a friend of your organization, Tracy Bain, is been working very hard to help figure out ways for new news organizations to stand on their own 2 feet with sort of wraparound services or shared services. I mean, to innovate in the business of journalism is very difficult these days, and I know you're part of that.
Yes. I mean, that's been really interesting, becoming an entrepreneur after, my background is in the editorial, the reporting side. Yep. So when I started Borderless with 2 partners, I didn't know anything about the business. I had to learn how to do accounting, how to, raise money, how to do everything. And so it's been a really exciting time in journalism, despite all of the attacks on journalists every day. And this year has been very difficult. I've been meeting with lawyers constantly to address threats to our reporters, to address threats to our newsroom. And, despite all that, there is a lot of optimism and hope in people who believe that journalism is still important. And, people like Tracy Bain are trying to gather those folks together and find ways to preserve and, reinvent in many ways the industry that we all love so much. And that's, the only industry that's part of our Constitution that is a very, important part of what it means to be American is to have a free press. And so what does that look like today? I think we're all trying to answer that in our own newsrooms.
Yeah, it's really important, these experiments that are going on right now. Nissa, are you able or comfortable saying more about why you're spending all this time with lawyers and why your reporters are being threatened?
Yes, of course. I think it's a lot of different things. I had no idea there were this many kind of lawyers until this year. So some of it, we're in a kind of unique spot as Borderless. We're a nonprofit. There have been a lot of threats to 501c3s at this moment. There's been a lot of conversations about what happens if the federal government decides to pull someone's 501c3 status, and what would that look like for funding? Could we have any funding? So thinking through those things and working with our board to make sure we are really secure and safe from that point. I think there's also the immigration side. A lot of immigration-related and immigrant-serving organizations are seeing federal threats at this moment, but they're also seeing heightened hate speech, heightened messages. We get a lot more messages on our email and social media now that are just really nasty. And I mean, some of that is just social media, but some of it gets very personal, attacking our specific reporters, for example. We've had people just show up at our office unannounced. We have had to really think through, what does digital safety look like? What does physical safety look like? For the first time in my 20 years, I've had to, purchase gas masks and goggles and these protective gear for reporters and make sure that they all know how to use it. All of our team carries personal alarms now. We're really just having to think through things like what happens if we get a subpoena? How do we protect the contact on, the information on people's phones and computers? And I think where this gets a little extra challenging for Borderless is because of, our superpower that so much of our staff are either immigrants or family members of immigrants. It puts us in an extra vulnerable situation where I wouldn't want, one of my reporters' phones to be subpoenaed. That information includes information about perhaps an undocumented family member, which gets to the federal government. So it's thinking through a lot of these different things. I think the other part is reporting, it's one thing for an ICE officer or a police officer to harass a journalist, when they're out reporting on these issues. It's another, it's like just heightened risk when an ICE agent or a police officer harasses an immigrant reporter. And, we've seen ICE has picked up immigrant reporters now and is threatening to deport them. And so that's a lot of the protections that are ingrained in law and also just culturally to protect journalists doing their work have been thrown out the window in this administration.
You say all that. What you just told me is so frightening and horrifying, and you said it so calmly, dispassionately. It's got to be terrifying in the newsroom. It's got to. I mean, I know it also gets your blood flowing. It gets you determined to do the job as opposed to back down. But it also just the cost of doing this in Chicago in the last couple months, where ICE and Customs and Border Patrol have been so provocatively aggressive in our city, has got to have been, I think, imagine, even if you've been a foreign correspondent, one of the most difficult experiences you've ever had.
It has. And I mean, I covered the Black Lives Matter protests here in Chicago, as you know, when I was a reporter working with the Christian Science Monitor. And this is at a scale that's so far beyond that. It has been kind of shocking. I will say, you know, earlier this year, I kind of made a realization that the only way for us to be safe, excuse me, is to quit and go move to a cabin in the woods, because there is no safe under this administration if we want to do the work that we want to do. You know, in order for us to be impactful and to do justice by the immigrant communities we serve, by the Chicagoans we serve, we really have to put ourselves out there in a way that is uncomfortable and, exactly as you said, it's scary. And so it's really having to sit with that fear, but also lean on people and figure out, you know, like I said, talk to lawyers, talk to other people. What are the things we can do to mitigate these risks? We're never going to be able to take them away. But, even things like planning now, we have plans. What happens if one of our journalists is arrested or is taken to the hospital? Like, what is the steps we're going to take? Who are we going to call? So it is a very unusual, scary moment, but I am also very grateful for everyone who has stepped up to support us at this moment.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about it, because I think Chicago has been fantastic, and Chicagoans have been wonderful through this terrible crisis. You're part of a community of journalists that includes, local TV reporters and reporters at old legacy newspapers like the one I used to run. And I think the journalists have, I know that it's a competitive industry, but I think you guys have all worked together remarkably well in taking care of each other in remarkable ways during this crisis.
Yes, there's something special about Chicago. And, I'm very biased. I've lived a lot of places in the world, but the only place in the U.S. I've lived is Cook County. So I'm Cook County through and through. And I think, too, when I talk to journalists or friends in other parts of the country, they really admire what we do here as a city. And this goes way beyond journalism. It goes to our organizing roots, to how people show up on the streets, to our politicians, standing up for people. We really fight back in a way that you don't really see in LA or some of these other places that got similar or, challenges related to ICE coming. Even during COVID, this was something that was very unique about us, the number of mutual aid groups that popped up to feed people. That was not something that you saw in other cities. So there's something about the way we care for each other in this city, and that there's just a shared agreement. You don't mess with Chicago. Don't mess with us, because we will bring it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's been my thoughts, not at the very beginning, but when I saw Chicagoans rise to the occasion, to not just the well-meaning, but the well-organized way journalists work together, the spontaneous ways residents poured out of their houses every time they knew ICE was coming, the eagerness to blow the whistle to alert people that they were coming, the desire to go spend money in immigrant neighborhoods to try and help out because of the economic impact of all of this that's happened all over the city, protecting kids after school or taking kids trick-or-treating, just what we were doing. This led me to think that Chicago is Donald Trump's Waterloo, that this is where he's declared he's gonna break this city or we're going to break him. And and I don't know, like Napoleon in Moscow, right? The winter has come and he's fled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think part of what we're seeing, in some ways I'm not surprised the way Chicagoans have really stood up. And, you look at, the ICE center in the suburbs, you look at other places where people are protesting every day. And, people are showing up. But, they tried to break us a couple of years ago with sending all the buses to Chicago. And that was very challenging for the city, and there were a lot of very understandable complaints Chicagoans had about how the city of Chicago handled the buses and the migrants and the housing. And, Borderless wrote a series of investigations on the poor way the city handled the housing of migrants in, a former factory in Pilsen where a little boy died. Mm-hmm. And despite all of that, despite the battering that we took with the buses and that situation, people are still willing to step up for their neighbors, even if it's a neighbor who came here more recently. So I think that's something very special. And I think the other thing that's, special is Borderless, like I said, we started with $0. I was working multiple jobs for years while we were trying to get this off the ground. And now we have a staff, but we are still a nonprofit, and we are run completely by donations. We don't get any government funding. And we have seen people donate to us more. We have seen foundations, there's a lot of foundations in Chicago step up and support these kind of stories, this kind of reporting more. Right now we're doing our end of year campaign. Every donation to Borderless gets doubled. And we have seen so many donations come in, and people write in, when they're putting their donation online, they leave a little note, and those have really kept our team going. Hearing what people's, their words of encouragement, keep doing this, because, we're just at the start. There's 3 more years of this. So we really need to make sure that we're equipped, that we can serve our Chicago community the way they deserve for the future as well as today.
For those of you who are listening, it's borderlessmag, borderlessmag.org. And I encourage you to just look at the site, look at the stories, read, just look at the kinds of stories that are reported and read some of them because they're authentic in a way that has often been very hard for journalists to get to in covering communities that they weren't part of. It just seems obvious. But when you see it done right, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, thank you. I think that really drives our coverage. We don't want to just repeat whatever politician or Trump is saying. Really talk about who are immigrants for their stories.
Pretend it's journalism?
Yes, we do not do that. That is not our perspective. There's plenty of places you can get that. That is not Borderless.
Unfortunately, yeah. Okay, so do you have of your most recent stories? Is there one that that really struck you that you would want to share with us?
I think there's one that. Yes, that really kind of stood out to me, and that was we followed up on, this father was killed near O'Hare Airport, Silverio, and there was a lot of coverage when it happened. But then everyone kind of disappeared. And the people in Franklin Park, the suburb, and Silverio's family, they had to still sit with that loss and the trauma of having this really violent incident. He was pulled over by ICE and then shot and killed by them, 38-year-old father, too.
Yeah.
At daycare, yes.
Yeah.
And, I'm a mother. Any stories like this, really kill me. But it was such a violent and horrific incident. And, it did get a lot of coverage, which was really good to see. I do think news outlets have stepped up in this moment to cover immigration. But like I said, kind of like the aftermath was missed. So our reporter, Ida, went, and actually it was a team of Ida and a couple of our photojournalists went back to Franklin Park again and again to learn more and to hear how people are living and sitting with that grief, because I think that's something, even when ICE leaves and things maybe go back to, quote, normal, people are going to be sitting with that trauma and the grief and having witnessed or experienced the violence.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a good story, and I thank you for picking that one to talk to us about. So right now, you guys reach, I don't know, not quite 250,000 people a month online, and they're not all in Chicago. Are you thinking of, while you're stressed and meeting payroll and doing all those things a startup does, are you also thinking of expansion?
We are, yes. I think, we've seen the number of people outside of Illinois. Our audience has really grown over the last few years, especially with Trump. There's a hunger for this kind of reporting, so definitely interested in expanding beyond Chicago as we grow.
Yep. All right, so tell people, if they feel like it, how they can make a contribution.
Yes, the easiest way is to go to our website. That's borderlessmag.org again. And there's just a donate button in the top right you can click, and then it's easy from there. And every donation between now and the end of the year is doubled.
Oh, that's good. It's nice to have a donor who's going to do that for you. Yep.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate your time and your work. I know it's really been beyond stressful these last few months, not just from the how do we keep up and do the business perspective, but from the how do we cope with the violence from the government, the hate that's been unleashed by the politics of the moment. And you're doing it, and you're providing a great service, great service.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you check out Borderless Magazine, and we're going to take a quick break for the news. And I have yet another treat for you in store as soon as we come back.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid, on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. I'm thrilled to be joined by Michael Mann. He is a climate scientist. He's actually professor of Earth and Environmental Science at the University of Pennsylvania. He is the author of scores of scientific studies in peer-reviewed journals and books for non-academics like me. His latest book is Science Under Siege: How to Fight the 5 Most Powerful Forces That Threaten the World. And I want to say before we go on, if this were an academic conference and I were introducing him properly, we would use the entire time here to talk about his distinguished career and the contribution he has made to a number of fields that he has done his work in. Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Edwin. It's great to be with you.
Hey, your latest book might just as easily have been titled Democracy Under Siege, because those same forces you write about are undermining democracy here in the U.S. and elsewhere. So that really interests me, and I want to focus on that. But before we do, can we talk a little bit about the impact climate change and fossil fuels are having on human health around the planet?
Sure. There is an array of consequences when it comes to the impact climate change is having on human health. There is some evidence that we are seeing more widespread, more deadly pandemics like COVID-19 because of climate change, because of the disruption that it creates, because it leads to habitat destruction, forces certain exotic animals out of their normal range, and where they're more likely to come into contact with human beings, like pangolins and certain types of bats. And we know that was part of the so-called zoonotic origins of COVID-19. And so this is something we talk about quite a bit in the book, because the way we see it, we have these two different existential crises, the climate crisis, ever more deadly pandemics, and there's a third crisis that we'll get to that is overriding. That's misinformation and disinformation that paralyzes us, that makes it difficult for us to address any of those problems. But we're seeing the spread of vector-borne disease like malaria because of warming, because of climate change. So whether it's infectious diseases, whether it's pandemics, whether it is extreme heat, which is one of the number one killers, and obviously extreme weather events, wildfires, floods, heat waves. All of that is a threat to human health. And by some measure, if you combine the effects of climate change with the health consequences of fossil fuel extraction and refining and burning, the water pollution, the air pollution that comes with it, this is a major source of mortality now, and it will become far more widespread if we don't act.
I have been interested in democracy, I don't know, since I was introduced to the ancient Greeks in fourth grade. It's just been a passion of mine, and it's been something I've studied and worked on most of my life. You're a scientist. You've been, I imagine, well, you tell me, when did it dawn on you that that your curiosity drove you into the world of science?
Yeah, so I would say from my earliest days, the earliest days I can remember, I used to ask the adults around me questions about, not just why is the sky blue, but traveling at the speed of light. I was just, I had this natural wonder about the physical world. Yeah. And I would say that was evident from a very early age. But during my teen years, I was truly inspired by the television series Cosmos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably not the only one, right?
No, me too. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Carl Sagan, and inspired me, sort of created the passion that I have for science was certainly magnified by just the world that Carl Sagan opened up for me, and the realization that you could spend your life pursuing some of the most fundamental questions that humanity has ever posed and trying to answer those questions. And that's what got me, on that path towards pursuing a career in scientific research.
I hear that, and I feel like the folks who are in my world, this is the world of democracy and politics, failed so miserably that you have to leave yours and come and help fix ours. Because, in fact, you have been taken, a little bit off the playing field that you've spent so much of your life on, that you're so good at, that you're so prolific at, that scientists have to spend their time on political issues because now politics is in the way of science, is profoundly damaging.
Yeah, one could certainly look at it that way, although I would say, my colleagues in that space and the world of politics and democracy and the study of authoritarianism. Mm-hmm. There's such good scholarship. There's so many great scholars doing that work. I don't fault them. I think we're, and this is really the thesis of the book fundamentally, that we are up against some monumental forces that are doing everything they can to infect our public discourse with misinformation and disinformation, to oppose, not just, as you allude to, not just taking action on climate or pandemics, but really they're going after democracy itself because it's a threat to the authoritarian, forces, the petrostates, the plutocrats. Democracy is a threat to them, and that's why it's under assault. And so it really is the same bad actors who are going, are promoting this anti-science, but the primary tool that they have for doing that is dismantling our democratic institutions so that it's an open playing field for them. And I, as you allude to, it's not what I chose to do. I was sort of reluctantly forced into this sphere, the public sphere, and to do battle against these forces. But I feel privileged to be in a position to do that.
Well, honestly, you joined great company. Some of Galileo's letters after he was locked in his room were pretty fabulous, and they actually weren't about, the planets. They were about the state of the world.
And Einstein wrote, a remarkable commentary back in the 1930s about the threat of corporate ownership of media. They all saw this coming. There was some of the great thinkers, whether scientists or in other areas of intellectual pursuit, did warn us.
Yeah, I think Einstein said compound interest was the most powerful force on the planet, but I think greed might be, and that's what That really is what's behind.
Yeah.
You have them conveniently called the 5 Ps. I frequently call them other things, like plutocrats is one of your topics, and that would be all of the people who are paying for the ballroom right now.
That's right.
Right.
I mean, you couldn't invent this, right? I mean, these narratives, the fact that the Gatsby-like parties that they're throwing, it's remarkable.
It's terrible. Yeah. So you call them plutocrats. The people who listen to the show hear me call them sort of autocrats. It's sort of when you build an autocracy, the man in charge has to be able to make other people rich, and those other people have to stay rich by using their efforts to keep him in power.
Yeah, and sometimes we call them oligarchs. There's obviously a Venn diagram where these all overlap. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have another. In reading your book, I was reminded there was a movie once. I wish I could remember the name, but it was about the media team that worked for the gun companies and the oil companies.
Yeah. It's not thank you for smoking.
Yes, thank you for not smoking or something.
Thank you for
like
not smoking, yes.
Yeah,
No, it's thank you for smoking.
Thank you for smoking.
Thank you for smoking. Written by Buckley, I'm drawing a blank on his first name, was the son of William F. Buckley, Christopher Buckley.
Oh, I didn't know he was his son.
Yes.
Wow. I'm so glad to know that that's not an inherited genetic trait.
Well, it's fascinating. We could spend all of our time talking just about that, but yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the misinformation machine that you've come up against in science.
Yeah, and so as you allude to, we talk about the 5 Ps, the 5 Ps in a pod. The plutocrats. The petrostates, these are countries that basically, where their, entire political infrastructure is tailored towards the extraction and selling of natural resources, in particular fossil fuels. And there are 2 more Ps that aren't in the official list that often go with that. Those are the polluters and the politicians who enable this. You got the plutocrats, you've got the petrostates, you've got the pros and propagandists.
Yep.
These are individuals, some are paid, some just are sort of useful idiots, as we sometimes call them, out there promoting the misinformation and the disinformation on social media, in our mainstream media, on podcasts, talk radio, you name it. They are the ground forces that help disseminate the misinformation and disinformation. And finally, we don't give the press a pass either. And obviously there's the right-wing press, the Murdoch media empire, Fox News, New York Post, but even our mainstream, so-called mainstream media outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post, which too often have engaged in what we characterize as performative neutrality, this idea that we have to platform anti-science on the editorial pages of the New York Times or the Washington Post because they deserve an equal, place in the conversation. It's irresponsible, and it is a major part of why we are in the predicament that we're in.
Yeah, I don't care what they put on their editorial page. What smokes me is that they do it in their news stories, in their straight news stories. They find one academic who is generally paid for by the industry so that they can say some scientists think climate change, is real and others don't.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It's the false balance that we see so often with climate. We see it with COVID now and vaccines. And, it's at some point they were all taught in, Journalism 101 that you're supposed to do that. Actually, that's not what they were taught. What they were taught was that accuracy trumps balance. That's one of the fundamental principles of journalism. But there's so much pressure from above. And in many cases, it would be easy to fault the journalists. I think often it isn't actually their fault. I've spoken with, I'm sure you have spoken with a lot of journalists over the years.
Married to one.
Yeah, and a lot of them are great. They're dedicated to their job, but there's this editorial pressure from above to do just that.
Yeah, it's lazy.
Yep.
I mean, in part of my life, I was the CEO of the Chicago Sun-Times.
Oh. Wow.
And I had an interesting conversation with an editor once where I said, look, all news. He said, well, we just do straight news, and there is no difference between straight news amongst news organizations. And I so strongly disagreed that I got stories about a fire in the Chicago, between the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times. And I just laid it in front of them and said, look, the first paragraph, details about the fire. Second paragraph, they're talking about the dollars lost in property damage. We're talking about the lives of the people who were hurt. You don't think those are the same story? I mean, it matters differently. Like we have to be very careful when we say, oh, there's just real news. Yep. There's the things that we're interested in, and that comes through in everything.
Yeah, no question about it. In some ways, it's sort of is adjacent to this idea that scientists shouldn't speak out about the implications of the science. They should just stick to the science, and it would be, in my view, it would be malpractice on the part of scientists to not be who are the greatest experts in the subject matter that they're researching, and are in the best position to provide objective and accurate information about matters of science that have implications for policy, for humanity. It would be irresponsible for scientists to remain silent, especially with the threats that we now face.
Well, I guess that's going to take me to asking you about the modern university, because scientists used to be important citizens talking about important things, and I think many scientists have been encouraged to keep their mouths shut by universities as they increasingly got government funding.
Yeah, that is true. There's a fair amount of pressure. Within the universities, research universities, that a primary source of funding is government grant support and the overhead associated with that. And so, there's often pressure to not ruffle the feathers of politicians. And right now, for example, we have a Republican president and Republican Congress that are instituting policies that are adverse to academia, that are adverse to science and scientists. And yet there is this pressure to not speak out about it because of the fear over the attention that may draw, the undesired attention that may draw from Congress, from the administration. And we see that playing out in a profound way right now.
It hasn't worked out too well for higher ed these days, because it's taking the best players off the field to talk about the importance of science. I don't think Americans can name a living scientist, and even if they could, they don't really understand what they're doing, so that lets the political rhetoric define you guys.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's 75% of the American public can't name a living scientist. And
there's actually a stat about that. That's
and I like to joke that the remaining 25% that can name my good friend Bill Nye.
Sure, that's right.
Who actually is a scientist, and he's a great science communicator, but he's not a down in the trenches, doing.
He's not publishing research
like our colleagues Peter and my colleagues. So I mean, and this is something we talk about in the book, the sort of the invisible scientist, as you allude to. If we're not out there presenting, a human face to science, then we leave the field wide open for these bad actors to come in and to instead put their own spin on science and scientists, and present scientists as these caricatures, as these villains who are just in it for the grant money. The more that we refuse to engage, and I wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about this more than a decade ago, the title of which was "If You See Something, Say Something." Because we should be communicating the implications of our science to the public. The public has great trust in scientists. Scientists are among the most trusted messengers in society. That's part of why we're under attack, because we are effective messengers, and the attack is intended to get scientists to shut up so that they're not out there, and that the bad actors can flood our information economy, our information infrastructure, our media environment with their ideologically, politically, and financially motivated anti-science.
I mean, I think about financially motivated is key here. I think about some of the press conferences at the end of the first Trump administration with fake science about, quack cures for COVID. Yep. I think about RFK Jr.'s complete undermining of the science of vaccines for what purpose? It's hard to tell. Somebody's making money off these of vitamin A or whatever it is but it's shocking.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's fascinating. I'll tell you, Edwin, because on the climate side, it's easy for people to understand what's the motivation for these bad actors. Yep. Hey, they're invested in fossil fuels. They want the world to stay addicted to fossil fuels, and the climate crisis is a threat to them, and clean energy is a threat to them, and that's easy to understand, right? What's harder for folks to understand is, well, why is it that the very same bad actors are going after vaccines and are going after public health messaging and the public health community? And Peter and I try to unpack that. Obviously, Peter is, that is his subject matter expertise. And we try to unpack that. And there are a number of things that come together. There's sort of the health freedom movement, which is this sort of libertarian movement, this idea that, doctors, medical professionals shouldn't be able to tell us what to do. And it goes way back. It's sort of embedded in the roots of libertarianism in this country. It goes back centuries, in fact. And that's part of it, and the way that has been weaponized now. But there was always that sort of latent tendency within the right, within the libertarian right. And, you have libertarian plutocrats like the Koch brothers. Now, we understand why the Koch brothers were opposed, have funded all of this disinformation infrastructure, think tanks, front groups, fake media outlets, that seek to discredit the science of climate change, because, hey, the Koch brothers, the Koch industry is the world's largest privately held petrochemical corporation. So that's easy to understand. But what's also interesting, the Koch brothers funded the so-called what was it? There was a fake scientific declaration, the Great Barrington Declaration, the beginning of the pandemic, featuring people like Jay Bhattacharya, now in high-level government positions on public health, and they were basically attacking the mainstream public health community. Which was advising that we needed these lockdowns, that we might need stay-at-home orders to stem the spread of the pandemic. And that was a huge threat to fossil fuel interests. And we can see it in the carbon emissions. There was a big dip in carbon emissions because of the pandemic. Less transportation, less use of energy. That was a threat to the bottom line of these bad actors like the Koch brothers, and that's why the Koch brothers were funding a lot of this anti-science in the public health space early on. And they created this sort of rabble, right? They created this base, this sort of MAGA base, was weaponized against the messaging from the public health community, and that would have huge implications then when it came to the development and deployment of the vaccine, because this was the public health community telling you need to vaccinate. And so the Koch brothers played a major role, although it's a little indirect, in creating this mass opposition that now exists to vaccination.
Yeah, I mean, undermining science helps them, and they'll undermine it no matter what, right? Because... yeah.
I mean, in a world where there are no experts and there are no rules, these bad actors flourish.
And so I guess I have to ask, did you put yourself through watching President Trump's speech at the United Nations?
I saw. I didn't watch it live or in its entirety, but I certainly saw clips of it, and was very aware of what he had said. Yeah,
he called climate change one of the greatest hoaxes of all time. I suppose, like the election he lost.
Right.
He said the freedom requires that everybody sign up for fossil fuels because we'll all go broke and be and not be able to enjoy our lives if we do anything else. I mean, how does it feel to have the President of the United States, stand up and lie like that and ignore all of the? It isn't even all of your work. It's all of the way of thinking that's been part of the West since Descartes about science.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's easy for us to say that's Trump. Hey, it's Trump being Trump, right? And that gives them a free pass, because what Trump is doing, he's parroting talking points that he's been handed by the plutocrats who elected him, who got him into office. Project 2025 was this blueprint for basically dismantling clean energy and climate action in the U.S. And it was essentially written by the
Heritage Foundation, funded by all those people, set in motion by Lewis Powell in the 1970s.
Right. Exactly.
Right? In a reaction, by the way, to, among other things, the very first efforts to regulate businesses on environmental issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this has been decades in the making, right? Yeah. This deregulatory plan to be, obviously polluters, corporate polluters, and other special interests, corporate special interests have long wanted a completely deregulatory environment where they can run amok, where they can do whatever they want. There are no rules, there are no restrictions, and they have been very patient. They have been working on this project for decades, and finally they got the alignment that they had been waiting for, where they had control of the presidency, control of Congress, both houses of Congress, and control of the Supreme Court. And they made sure they hit the ground running, and they have been at breakneck speed working to implement every single item in Project 2025. And Trump is just their vessel. Yeah. Trump is just the medium through which they're implementing that. In some ways, he's a pawn, actually. He's not self-aware enough to really even be, to attribute the motives to Trump himself would be giving him too much credit. He's just a vessel through which they are now acting.
I agree with that, but I also believe that if he goes, they lose their ability to act.
I think you're exactly right about that. There's nobody else who sort of is able to mesmerize, I guess is the word I'd use, their base. Than Donald Trump, and certainly J.D. Vance wouldn't be able to do that. So I think that's exactly right, and you derive some hope from that, I think.
I derive hope from that, and from the fact that I think as we are speaking, if the polling is correct, he might be the most hated man in America, which is a terrible thing for an American president to be. But there are many terrible things this president is. So,
I mean, and the amazing thing is, given everything that he's done, it's just remarkable that this didn't happen earlier, and that, there's still the latest polling says he's got 36%. And you can look at that and say that's like near record, low levels of popularity for a president, for a sitting president. But you can look at that and say, darn, more than a third of the public looks at what he's doing and says, I like that.
Yeah, well, it's a big population, big diverse population, and we get, as you know, an amazing amount of propaganda being at us.
Right.
So I'm very proud of Americans that despite this enormous propaganda machine, that number is about a third and going down.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I've seen, when I was down under a few years ago, back during the Black Summer in Australia, they are subject to, Rupert Murdoch has an almost complete stranglehold on their print and television media environment. And yet, the Australian people have proven pretty resilient in the face of that massive disinformation. Yeah. And I think, I've always been impressed by that. And I think you're right. It's a reason for us to have some hope here in the U.S. that people do seem to be seeing behind the veil now.
Yeah. One more thing I guess I want to ask you, and it's less about our politics and more about global climate change and economics. Yeah. China doesn't have fossil fuels, so they don't want to be spending their fortune buying them, so they have worked harder than anybody to find clean energy solutions, and they're moving that way at breakneck speed. And it's proving that it's cheaper now to get clean energy than fossil fuels. So once that starts to happen, my guess is that fossil fuel industry may be powerful and may be immune to a lot of things, but they're not immune to the laws of economics, and their investors are going to see that they're no longer a growth industry.
Yeah, that's entirely correct. I mean, China was they were mining quite a bit of coal.
Yes.
But they're moving away from that. They're investing, as you say, far more in renewable energy than we are. In fact, investing in renewable energy to the extent that it's actually leading to lower prices globally for clean energy. Yeah. And it's clear what direction the market forces are pushing us. The Stone Age didn't end for want of stones. The fossil fuel age won't end for want of fossil fuels.
There's still horses.
Yeah, something better has come along, and that's the direction things are moving. Yeah. The only problem is right now they're not moving. Economic forces, market forces alone, given the current environment, aren't moving us there fast enough. And that's the argument for why we need incentives to actually speed up that transition.
Which we had.
The damage that
we had them in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why this administration is now working so hard to dismantle that. And so, the fight goes on.
Well, thank you for your work, both your scientific work and the work you do to explain it to the rest of us. And the time you take to go on shows like this, and I know you've been on dozens and dozens of them, to make your case to the public. It's just so fabulously important. Well, I'm really grateful to you.
Well, thank you, Edwin. This is truly one of the best conversations that I've had in a while, and so I really enjoyed it. Happy to come back another time. And
I'd love that. I'd love that. Thank you so much. I know you. Yeah, I'll make sure that happens.
Thanks.
Take care.
You too.
All right, everybody. That was the distinguished professor, climate scientist Michael Mann. Get his book, please. Science Under Siege.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
Hello. Sorry about that, everybody. I leaned on a mute button. Anyway, I want to hear from you at 773-763-9278. Lots to talk about. Dave, start us off.
Hey, Edwin. Yeah, I'm seeing a story here now where it sounds like the drumbeats of war are starting to get a little bit more volume, as I read where the U.S. military's plan to revive old bases in Latin America, or deactivated bases of Panama, Puerto Rico, and potentially Ecuador, are coming back to life as the U.S. military builds up forces in the region. This move comes as the military shifts it away from the Middle East and into the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, in Panama, U.S. soldiers and Marines began training in a new jungle warfare school using the previously abandoned base after it was handed over to the Panamanian state 25 years ago. And as part of Ecuador, part of the Eloy Alfaro International Airport in Manta. Was home to American forces starting in 1999, and the U.S. left Manta in 2009 after a decade of operations when Ecuador banned foreign militaries inside the country. So they're still working on that one. And then in Puerto Rico, of course, they had a base there at one time, and so they can have their footprint now in that area right around Venezuela and that. And I haven't heard how many. Pardon?
We have no business going to war with Venezuela.
I agree.
None.
I agree.
And this president needs congressional authorization to take us to war. And, of course, this is a president who acts without it and says, well, go to court, and then the court can order me to stop. But it is a crime. It will be a war crime. It will be a stain on the United States that will last for generations.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%, especially when he doesn't have any skin in the game, other than his big mouth as a bully and that. But, hey, before I clear up, did you hear something where Trump got the pardon upon Trump card now that he's going to pull some string now where we cannot see this Epstein files in these from your senators or nothing? And they were talking about that on CNN last night.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see all of them.
I agree.
I don't think that. But the House is going to vote, and the House, I believe, will vote to release the file, to demand that the files be released. Then it goes over to the Senate. Some people think the Senate will just kill it. I'm not sure that's right. You only need 3 senators, and there's a lot of pressure on this. And Donald Trump's popularity, he may try and go to war in order to change the subject, but his popularity is sinking. I think the Senate may actually say it. So will Donald Trump then veto it? Will he? Or will he? Yeah. I mean, and if he vetoes it, well, that's something, doesn't it? I mean, then he's just toast. He's already plutonium. But I'm sure he's saying, he's ordering people in the government to destroy as much of it as they can. Just destroy it. It's hard to do these days with documents. Right? I mean, Elon Musk, remember, he said he'd seen them. He said when he was mad at Trump, remember, he tweeted, release the Epstein files, Trump is all over them. So, for all I know, he's got copies of them because what was Doge doing but copying stuff all over the government? So I don't know if you're going to be able to get rid of it. I'm sure he's promising pardons to anybody who does get rid of it. But, he'll do anything.
But keep your ear, to I think I heard something about it, and it's like where he'd be untouchable. They couldn't do nothing then, if this he pulls it out. But
he's on. John Roberts said Donald Trump can. Remember when Donald Trump said I could go down and shoot somebody on the streets in New York? Well, John Roberts basically said, that's right. We're going to say if he shoots somebody in the streets in New York, he's fine. If he blows up a fisherman in the Caribbean, he's fine. If he sends his goons to gas reporters in Chicago, he's fine. Because John Roberts thinks that's what a president should be allowed to do. But the truth, whether we can hold him accountable or not, we're going to get the truth.
Yeah,
and then we'll throw him out.
Seen it on CNN or something. Mimi Roca, one of these former from SDNY, and I said that this guy is doing is shredding the Constitution totally and that. But ironically, though, if it does get that where he'd have to sign it, it'd almost be like when former VP Al Gore or former VP Harris had to sign the vote thing. The only thing in this one, Trump would have to. Is being vetoed it. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that to you. Let me get off so others can talk.
Appreciate that, Dave.
Have a good weekend, Edwin. Bye.
You too. All right, I'm at 773-763-9278. Jim, you're next.
Hi, Edwin. I'm hoping the Sunday talk shows talk about the job figures for October. We're shedding jobs like Yak does in the wintertime in the Alta. I think we lost 9,000 jobs in October, but we will have to accept whatever the administration says about that. To just keep that quiet. And I was going to mention there was a gal from a barista from Manhattan. She's working 60 hours a week, barely making her rent. And the CEO of the company of Starbucks makes $94 million in 4 months. And she said, I don't know if that's quite fair. I'm working 60 hours and I can't pay the rent. What do you think, Evan? Do you think that's a little lopsided or what?
I think we have seen greed run rampant for the last 30 years in America. You know, it used to be that CEOs would earn maybe 8 or 10 times what the median income of their company was. It's supposed to 800 times what the median income of their company was. You know, it's just it's not ethical. It's not consonant with the idea that we're all in this together. It's dangerous for the country. This notion that we can create a wealthy oligarchy that dances around, you know, their private islands while the rest of us work for them.
Look for snap. But, you know, it just occurs to me, they said, you know, some of the younger voters went Republican last time. I wonder if the propaganda told them, well, the Republicans will set up an economy where you can, you know, you too can be extremely rich and get rich fast and so on and so forth. But I don't know. I think they've come to the conclusion. I think after 8 or 9 months of this, it feels like 90 years of this guy. I think they've come to the conclusion that this isn't working for anybody. The Republican plan isn't working for anybody. Anyway, no. When you have a good, it's not working for anybody. Thank you, buddy.
I appreciate that. Yep. All right, Brian. Brian, you're calling from New Mexico?
Yes, Edwin. I've spoke to you before.
Yes,
I used to live in Chicagoland.
Yep.
And
it's New Mexico came up earlier on the show today. You know, when I was talking to Charles Gaba about health care, and he talked about how you sign up for the ACA, and it's a little bit different in New Mexico. So, just interesting.
I'm not on that myself, but I wanted to make some comments. You finished up your interviews with that environmentalist. Was that Michael Mann or Hansen?
Yes, indeed it was. Michael Mann. Yep, fabulous scientist.
Yeah, I agree with what he says. I do not. Climate change is extremely real. Believe me, I know. But here's the predicament. I think our politics need to show more maturity and be honest and realize they have to come up with a bridge plan. For those that just say stop using fossil fuels, you really sound silly and childish. Because right now, at this very moment, 99% of everything you see, use, and eat is brought to your vicinity by a machine burning diesel fuel or jet fuel. You know, if you go out to a nice seafood restaurant after this evening for something to eat, that food on your plate was probably flown in on a jet. And that's our whole lifestyle. And a lot of people that don't live in big cities depend on their cars and their trucks. And the people that are driving the most gasoline-powered cars are poor people. Now,
Brian,
I know,
wait, hang on. What you are arguing for is exactly what was happening when Biden was president. He passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which was a whole bunch of incentives for non-fossil fuels. He did not, as a lot of people wanted him to do, he did not take away all the subsidies to fossil fuels. He did not try and phase them out. In fact, he got in some trouble for saying, you know what, we're going to consider some pipelines and we're going to consider a new port to export liquid natural gas because exactly that point. We are in a transition period, but can we speed up that transition or should we grind it to a complete halt? So I take your point, but I want to say your point is exactly what the last administration was doing.
Right, but on kind of at the sophisticated level that learned people can understand, the average Joe that's just buying gas at the pump, you know, they're hearing right-wing propaganda and they're seeing their gas prices go up, so they think they blame the Democrats because they want to choke off the oil supply, which, in fact,
that's
they
interesting.
do. We want to reduce the consumption of hydrocarbons. Right?
Sure, but not that way. The way we did it was to bring down the cost of fossil fuels, and mostly for large scale electricity production, not for people's cars. Although we're happy to see other kinds of vehicles, although Tesla's complicated that matter, but other kinds of vehicles show up. But no, there was never an attempt. In fact, the Republicans got mad again at Biden when he released stuff from the Strategic Energy Reserve to help lower the cost of gasoline. So
Right.
The point you're raising is that there's something about the way we talk or the way we let Republicans talk that lead people to think it's the Democrats' fault that costs are going up. When, in fact, that's not the way this rolls. We've done a lot to make sure that energy prices come down, and in the long run, oh my gosh, we can bring down them a lot, as China has by beginning to shift to less expensive alternative energies. But you're right. We have to talk about it more clearly.
I agree with that. And it's all about the framing of the issues. And I think it's really easy. The media likes to get really lazy and use catchphrases. And that just does a disservice to everything. And then your first interview you did was really good, too, about the immigration issue, I think it was, or the media. And I think Democrats need to frame immigration. It's a numbers issue, not a racial issue. Progressives always like to talk about it as being racist who want to control immigration. I'm for controlled legal immigration, but there has to be a rational plan behind it, and it needs to benefit the average American worker. Having a out-of-control, messy immigration system benefits the illegal immigrants that cut the line, and it benefits wealthy people because they get a bigger pool of workers to hire from, and it helps to hold wages down. So
there's one more beneficiary, Brian. There's one more beneficiary.
And who's that?
That is Donald Trump and the Republicans who can then campaign against it. Because remember, once again, for the first time since early in the Bush years, Congress had an agreement on a new immigration law. One that would do, again, exactly what you're asking for, end the chaos at the borders, actually pay for a whole lot more equipment at the borders so you could detect things like fentanyl, and put in a whole lot more judges so that people who come here and legitimately ask for asylum, we have a way of judging them quickly, not in 11 years, but in like a month and a half. And if they don't get it, send them back, right? All of that was in the bill that Donald Trump said you cannot pass. It was a bipartisan
bill. I'm very aware of all of that. But the thing is, since Reagan, we've had a loosey-goosey open immigration system, and it was done on purpose, intentionally.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying we have an answer now.
But I'm saying we can't live with that into the future. 20 years into the future, I don't think that's going to work.
No,
I think
it's not. Of course it's not.
A rational, So what do we talk about what the rational level needs to be?
Yeah, we need to pass a good
Biden
bill.
Didn't want to pass the bill until the third year of his presidency, and it was a negative issue for him.
I got it.
Right?
Totally. Whatever the reason is, he was a day late and a dollar short on that. I don't disagree with you. But it got torpedoed by Trump.
Of course it did.
Yeah, because I say he's a beneficiary of out of control. He's a beneficiary of chaos at the border. Chaos is his friend everywhere. Yeah.
He wants chaos everywhere, and he steals money.
Yeah.
All right,
Brian, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Paul, you're next. Paul?
Yes, hi. I would ask Brian, where's the immigration bill now?
Well, don't ask Brian. Brian said he's just saying we need one, and we need to pass it. I mean, and you know where it is. It's nowhere because well, what's Mike Johnson going to do? Really? He's going to try and pass actual legislation? Can you see him melting down in that puddle, that little man in that puddle of sweat when he had to swear in a new congressman? And she said, it's abuse of power for one man to make me wait, make the whole state wait to swear in their duly elected representative. This puddle of a man is not going to give us anything difficult like an immigration law.
No, and since 1986 we haven't had. Well, actually, immigration wasn't really an issue until after 9/11 is when the Republicans began to make an issue of it, and have never, ever, I mean, even in Trump's first term, when he had both houses of Congress, he said he was going to build a border wall. He shut the government down in the holiday after Christmas of 2018 because the Democrats had won the election, the midterm election, and he still hadn't gotten funding from his own party for the border wall. And so before the Democrats even took office, he shut the government down as a way to threaten them, not let them take their seats. And that was 35 days. And there's just never, they want the issue to complain about. And that's all there is to it. So I wouldn't say that, it's been a loosey-goosey open borders policy since 1986. It became an issue that they wanted to keep as an issue all along. I'm down with that. But what do you hear? The hesitance you hear in my voice isn't that I don't agree with any of this. It's that I don't want to talk about our immigration policy on the border. I'm not playing on their turf anymore. You know what? Yeah. He's got to answer for shutting down the government so that we won't figure out who the rapists are of these young women. I'm sorry, they don't control the dialogue anymore. They shut the government down and they said Americans don't deserve food. You know what? You can say, oh, we have a problem on the border. I don't care. I care about, you're the government of the United States telling Americans they should starve. You're the government of the United States saying you can't afford health care. You're the government of the United States saying we're tearing down half the White House so I can build a golden ballroom. You want to grab your violin and fiddle about the border, and you want to come to my city and kidnap American citizens off the street. Paul, that building that they Black Hawk helicoptered down into and collected everybody and zip-tied them all, you know how many people they actually arrested? 2. after all of that, 2. Yeah. I mean, seriously, they want to go. They want to go all the border. You know what? Take your border and cross it, and good riddance to you. But here in this country, we care about each other. And we're talking about and we're talking about an issue that is civil law. We're talking about all the people that have been. All the citizenry of the city of Chicago that have had their constitutional rights infringed over civil infractions, and they have hardly taken anybody into, and we don't even really know what the result of. Yeah, and here's the other thing about
for a while because they're not communicating, but the nice judge is telling people they have to release people. I mean, look, my point is. The days that they get to control the agenda need to be over. Let's just say, okay, look, Democrats, we don't get everything right, for sure. And we made a lot of mistakes in the past, for sure. Will we make some in the future? You bet. But right now, for the sake of the country, let's just not be too eager to spend all the time looking in the mirror and talking about those things. We do look in the mirror. We try and fix our mistakes. We try and move forward. These other guys are criminally dangerous for the country.
They are. Donald Trump is a depraved, seriously deviant individual.
There you go.
Donald Trump.
That's so much better than talking about what was the border like. See what I mean?
Yeah,
does it feel better? Yeah. Let's just stay on that conversation.
We can't because we're not really. It is duplicitous to think that or to have a conversation with people who don't want to fix the problem when you have somebody who's the leader of their party
the dictator of their party and wannabe dictator of you and me is a murderer, a sex offender, a pedophile, a rapist, and there's no doubt, there's nothing about this. As I've said to people, if there's any redeemable quality about Donald Trump, I've got to leave it to God to find it, because I can't. And if he can, if God can figure it out, then let him, because there's nothing here. He violates the Constitution. That's our system of government. If you think you got a better way, well, let me see it. That's all I can say. But, you talk about, Terry, it was on Wednesday, I was having a Zoom meeting with my friends from Michigan, the Writers Club, the Democratic Writers Club in Livingston County. Or I was once the leading, I think in 2020, I had 21 published letters to the editor. In 2021, I was the leading writer of that group. And I said to them, we talked about the White House, and I said, you know what? If the Democrats don't take power, I think that Trump, in next November, that Trump will tear the rest of the White House down. And sure enough, in the next morning, Trump said he may have to tear down more of the White House on Thursday morning to make room for his ballroom. He may have to tell. He's going to do it before November. He knows that. He's going to do it. You know why? Just to piss you off. To piss, because he thinks that's owning the libs to tear down our institutions. As David Brooks said in a YouTube clip that I found, I don't know if I sent it to you, but he says this is what the Republicans have come to, is to tear down our institutions and our traditions. It's what the MAGA does. And so we can't function and even really talk seriously, as you point out, about issues like the border or immigration, which, by the way,
we will, when we get back in power, we will do the things that need to be done, things that including things that we didn't do well in the past, because there are plenty of them. You know, we can learn, and we'll do better. But you can't trust you can't trust these other guys to do it. You just can't anymore. Hey, I'm gonna run because we are done. Thank you as always. Roosevelt and Robert, I don't think I'm going to get to you today. I apologize. We'll do it again next time. But look, everybody, I am. You won't hear from me again until after Thanksgiving. I have to be away for a little bit. So I wish you stay with the fight. Keep the focus where it needs to be. I couldn't be more proud of all of you for what you're doing and for being part of the struggle that we are all in for this great democracy and for each other. And I wish you all the happiest of Thanksgivings.